Thanks for joining us on 90s Plus. I'm Chris Bianchi. After 7 long months of no Denver Broncos football, Broncos training camp starts up on July the 28th. And by the way, if you're planning on heading to Dove Valley to go watch Broncos training camp this year, you need tickets. Now, they're free, but you have to go on the Broncos website in order to get those tickets. We'll have more on that here in just a second. But the Broncos themselves making big changes this offseason. They got a new coach, all sorts of new faces on both sides of the ball. And the guy who'll be tracking all this for you, who else? 90s Broncos insider mike-klis joins us now. Mike, first of all, I guess obviously the big change here in training camp, it's got to be Sean Payton, the new head coach for the Broncos. What will a Sean Payton training camp look like compared to a Nathaniel Hackett one or ones from previous years?
Well, Nathaniel Hackett had he had his practices every 3 days in training camp. He had a 1 day where you went kind of 75% speed, as far as popping the pads, and I think he went full speed, but as far as contact goes, he had another day where they went really hard. I mean, really hard. They really popped. They really got after it. And he had the third day, and this is where he got some criticism, where it was a jog through, and that was unusual for training camp. You only have so many days. You don't practice in the afternoon anymore. You kind of have walkthroughs in the afternoon. So that he got a little criticism for that every third day jog through. He did go hard 1 out of the 3 days, very physical. And I think Sean Payton, his training camp is going to be more like that 1 day that was physical every third day. I think it's going to be 2.5 days with Sean Payton, so every third day, if you know what I mean. So he's going to have the pads on as much as possible. He's going to have contact as much as the rules allowed, and the intensity is going to be greater. There's more fear that the players are going to feel with the new coaching staff and Sean Payton than they did maybe with the bro hug guy and Nathaniel Hackett. So there's different styles. It didn't work for the Broncos last year with Nathaniel Hackett. The Broncos paid big bucks for Sean Payton, and it's up to him to end this 6-year losing streak the Broncos are on. And I personally think he will.
Okay. I kind of want to get into some of that optimism here in just a second, but I guess when it comes to looking at this new Broncos team, and we're starting off training camp at the beginning of the year, so to speak, these Broncos obviously do look quite a bit different. We'll get into some of those changes here in just a second, but ultimately, Mike, and you said this throughout the offseason, it really still does come back to number three. It comes back to Russell Wilson at the end of the day, right?
They're in trouble if Russell doesn't bounce back. There's no doubt about it. And, people are talking about if Russ plays like he did last year, then they'll get out of the contract after this season. And that's maybe true, but understand that there's an $85 million cap hit if they cut him after this season. It does the Broncos no good if Russell Wilson is no good. It hurts them here or not here. So they need Russell Wilson to bounce back. And Sean Payton, they believe or they hope they will. I saw him during the offseason, OTAs and in minicamp. And to me, something is very noticeable about the way Russ is playing versus how he played last year. Last year, things were very deliberate from the time he broke the huddle to the line of scrimmage to getting the play, the snap off. If you recall the fans in game 2, counting down the time clock in mock because they were having those delay of game penalties. That's not likely to happen near as often with Sean Payton. It's going to be Sean Payton's call, and Russell Wilson's going to run Sean Payton's call. And what Russ was doing was getting rid of the ball quick. Russ likes to kind of avoid the rush, scramble, get off script, and throw it deep. With Sean Payton, he's going to get rid of the ball quick on quick slants, quick curls, flares to the sideline. But he's going to get rid of the ball quick, and there are a lot of middle patterns. And I think you'll see a more accurate Russell Wilson. Um, it may take a few weeks for Russell to adjust to this new offensive system, but he wanted Sean Payton to be the coach. Um, he wants to be resurrected with this offense. He knows his legacy is a bit out of a crossroads here, and so he needs a bounce back season. And he just was too good for too long, 10 years, to believe that he won't be able to bounce back with Sean Payton as his coach, who's one of the best offensive coaches out there. I think there's reason for optimism, but then again, you have to tap down enthusiasm a little bit because of the way Russ played last year. It's either he didn't have the right coaching or he's not the right quarterback as he was earlier in his career. We're going to find out, but I do think the coach will get him going again.
Well, for those who might be unfamiliar, we've obviously talked about Sean Payton and Russell Wilson, the two key players for this Broncos, or two key pieces, I should say, for this Broncos upcoming team. Obviously, a lot of big offseason moves as well. Do you mind just kind of highlighting some of those big ones and some of those biggest changes on both sides of the ball from the offseason?
Yeah, the biggest thing that they did was address the interior on both sides of the ball. There are three biggest free agent signs. The first two were offensive linemen. Ben Powers at left guard. They believe he's an upgrade on Dalton Reisner. I'm going to have to see it to believe it. I'm sure he is. Those guys know what they're talking about. I kind of like Dalton Reisner. He's a 4-year starter there. At right tackle, that's been a swinging gate for the Broncos. Mike McGlinchey is going to be the 11th starting right tackle on opening day in the last 11 years. They've had a new one every year since they switched Orlando Franklin after the 2013 Super Bowl. They switched him to left guard, and they've had a new right tackle every year since. McGlinchey and Powers are the two biggest additions. They also signed Zach Allen at defensive line, interior defensive line. He replaces Draymond Jones. Now, I don't know if that's an upgrade. I think they like Zach Allen, his intangibles, his work ethic, his leadership. He's stout against the run. He's more of a two-way player than Draymond. Draymond's more of a pure pass rusher. Draymond is a better pass rusher, by the way, than Zach Allen. But Zach Allen might have a few more things going for him. So they got him. Those are their three top free agents. They signed them at McGlinchey was $17.5 million a year. Powers was $13 million a year, and Allen was it kind of varies depending on where you look, 14.5 to 16.5. In there depending on what metric you look at on his contract. And then they added a solid blocking tight end in Chris Manhertz. They added a solid fullback. The name's escaping me now. He's from the Kansas City Chiefs. Michael Burton. So it sounds like they want to run the ball. They added a Samaje Perine, a running back who's 240 pounds. So they want to play a little physical, smash mouth type of football. They hope Javonte comes back from injury. With the draft, they couldn't pick to the last pick in the second round. They got Marvin Mims to add some speed at the receiver. And then in the third round, they got Drew Sanders, an inside linebacker, who can also flip to the outside edge. And they have Riley Moss, a third round cornerback from Iowa. Those guys are going to contribute a little bit, but by and large, those are the big additions for the Broncos. And the backup quarterback, Jarrett Stidham, who had two nice games at the end of the year for the Raiders last year, they have confidence he can emerge into a starter. He can develop into a starter. He's going into year 5. He hasn't yet, so we'll see about that. But they think they've upgraded. This is Sean Payton's team. It's Sean Payton's vision. And he's going to reshape this roster in the way he has it imagined. And it's his style of coaching. It's his style of play more than the players themselves, I think, with the Broncos going forward.
So, with that said, suppose when it comes to training camp, one of the big hallmarks of it, of course, tends to be positional battles and who might be battling for a starting spot or even an overall position on the roster. What are some of those big positional battles that you'll be closely watching, Mike?
Yeah, I think there's two on defense. The biggest one to me is at safety, opposite as the partner to Justin Simmons. Kareem Jackson is back, but it's a non-guaranteed $2.7 million salary. And Caden Stearns is in his third year, who hasn't been able to stay healthy because of a hip problem. At least he wasn't healthy last year. So Kareem and Caden Stearns is going to be a big competition. I think the biggest competition for pure starter. It's between those two. And then if Kareem doesn't start, do they keep him as a backup at 2.7 million? That's going to be a question. And backup meaning a big nickel role. You know, they have all those dime passing packages that they can use. I do believe that Riley Moss is going to compete with K'Wan Williams at the nickel position. I think that's a situation where Riley might play more in the second half of the season than the first half. Same with Drew Sanders at inside linebacker. He's got two $6 million men ahead of him, and Josie Jewell and Alex Singleton. Josie Jewell's $6 million, if I'm right, is not guaranteed. So kind of keep an eye on that. See how Drew Sanders. They do want Drew Sanders to play. They're going to have a package for him. On the offensive side, I think Marvin Mims and KJ Hamler. How is that going to shake out? Will they keep both? If they only keep one, obviously Marvin Mims is going to make the team. He's a second-round rookie. Does that mean KJ Hamler doesn't? What do they do there? And then at tight end, it's Dulcich, Adam Troutman, and Manhertz. Dulcich is a receiver. Troutman is more of a two-way guy, blocker and receiver. And Manhertz is a straight blocker. So how are you going to use those three? Who's going to be the quote-unquote number one? I guess it doesn't matter. Troutman, Manhertz, they're all going to play. And Dulcich is going to get the catches, by the way, for your fantasy leaders out there. But those, I guess, are the competitions. And then it's Elliott Fry at kicker against the rest of the NFL. His competition are those, there's about 5 or 6 teams that have legitimate 2 kickers battling in camp and preseason. And, they'll only keep one of those 5 or 6 competitions. And so the Broncos either pick up one of those guys who don't win the job from those other teams, or they stick with Elliott Fry. So those are the basic competitions there.
I guess final main question for you here, Mike, is last year the excitement was palpable. The Broncos had gotten Russell Wilson. Not to say that there's obviously, I think it's safe to say there was obviously a bit of a letdown after what many have called the most disappointing season in Broncos history last year, with Broncos going 5-12 and Russell Wilson's first year just looking not the part for many parts of the season. That said, how would you assess overall expectations heading into training camp of year 2 of Russell Wilson now?
Guarded. Guarded optimism are the expectations. I think they can go 10-7, but things have to fall right. They have to stay healthy. They haven't been healthy the last couple of years. It's been one thing after another. Part of that is because, I don't know, when you get off the bad starts, slow starts, it just bad teams just seem to get injured. I think if you're winning, you kind of fight through pain a little more. I think they got a chance to go 10-7. 9-8 would be in a very encouraging, probably a satisfactory season. 8-9, I think, would be disappointing because Sean Payton is not an 8-9 coach. He coached 1 year in the 17-game schedule. He was 9-8 that year, and Drew Brees wasn't the quarterback. He used Taysom Hill, who can't throw very well, as his quarterback that year, and still went 9-8. So The expectation, I think they should expect to win 10 and make the playoffs because that's where the standard should be. The bar should be at minimum for the Denver Broncos, despite the last 6 seasons. It should be 10 wins at least and make the playoffs at least. Now they got all the. It seems like they got enough pieces. Russell Wilson is the wild card to all of this, and but still, if you have Russell Wilson and you gave up all you did, and you have Sean Payton and you gave up all you did, you gave up some draft picks to get him and money. You should win 10 games.
So that's the expectation. Heading
Yeah.
into training camp 2023, Mike-Klis, you'll be tracking it all for us here on 9 News. And Mike, thanks so much for joining us here on 9 News Plus and giving us a bit of a preview here of training camp 2023.
Right on, Chris. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.